Hello and welcome to the Outside the Cockpit Hungarian Grand Prix post-race show. My name is Sam Donzik. As always, I'm joined by TJ D here. How are you doing today, TJ?
Doing really good. Still trying to catch my breath. What a race.
Yes, absolute madness, absolute carnage. We're going to get all into it. We're going to get into it all and stuff throughout this show today. But let's just start with that turn one carnage because holy moly, it was like bowling, as Charles Leclerc tweeted out afterwards. I don't know if you saw that tweet or not, but he was like,
I did. Yeah.
He was a little bit pissed off because he was like, oh, bowling and stuff, like what a mess. And it's like, yeah, that's just unfortunate the way, because basically what happened is Bottas just pretty much braked way too late and just ran into the back of, I believe it was Lando Norris that he ran into the back of. And then that spun into the Red Bull. And then also Charles Leclerc got a bit of it from Lance Stroll. So it was just very unfortunate, the whole thing. But somehow Lewis Hamilton came out unscathed, like completely just avoided the whole thing, along with Sebastian Vettel and Esteban Ocon as well. They both made some smart moves and stuff to avoid. So what are your thoughts on that turn one insanity?
Well, everything was happening behind Lewis Hamilton, so that's why he was able to avoid everything, because it all happened behind him. But I mean, this was a nightmare for not only Valtteri Bottas but also for Red Bull and McLaren, because effectively all four of their cars were really taken out. I mean, when Bottas hit Norris, he also ended up taking out both the Red Bulls. Perez was out on the spot, and then Verstappen had to run pretty much the rest of the race with a damaged floor, and that really cost him any chance of getting a decent result. I mean, he was able to salvage a point at the end, but I mean, that's not really saying much. I mean, when Mercedes are all of a sudden hitting form, and with the championship so close as it is, I mean, it's going to be a really, these moments are going to be key, and it's already a close battle, and it could add up to a potentially disastrous result after Abu Dhabi.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's really like these, like you said, there's certain moments in a calendar year which, like, you look at that and it's like you go down to Abu Dhabi. It's like, okay, if that did happen, then this would happen. Like, what if? So it's one of those championship deciding moments, and it is huge as well because both Red Bulls, obviously, Sergio Perez was immediately taken out, and Max Verstappen running damage, like with a damaged car, and obviously for the McLarens and stuff. Both of them, I think Daniel Ricciardo was still running along with Lando. No, Lando Norris was out, sorry. Lando Norris was out of the race.
Lando had to retire.
It had to retire. But Daniel Ricciardo, again, running with a damaged car. And it's like when you have that damage, and it's like they were able to repair some of it during the red flag, I believe, for both Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen. But there was permanent floor damage they just couldn't replace in that amount of time that they had. It had to be fixed back at the factory. So it was just really unfortunate to see. But, still an exciting start nonetheless. As we like to see sometimes, again, because it was just such weird weather, because it was it was still wet, but they're running inters. But then after the red flag, the track had really dried up, which actually kind of led to a very interesting grid start, which was Lewis Hamilton was the only one on the grid because everyone else had pitted.
Yeah, and that was really interesting that he decided to stay out, because I mean everyone had come in. I mean, George Russell said afterwards it was really a no-brainer to come in because it was drying up and everything like that, and the obvious choice was to go on the slicks. So I mean, why Hamilton stayed out, I'm not sure. And that the decision to stay out became even more important given that he had to come in on the next lap. He said over the radio the track was dry, so he had to come in, and he ended up coming out last. But it was really interesting what George Russell said to Sky Sports afterwards. Because he said had Hamilton boxed, the same thing might very well have happened. So, or maybe they'd have come out in the middle of the pack because the Mercedes pit is the first one into the pit lane. So he might have been able to jump a few places from the bottom, but I mean, and that could have ended up giving him the win. But I mean, it does still, you do still have to wonder why they decided to stay out. I still don't really get why when over the radio, I think it was Ocon who was it was Russell who was being told everyone's going to come in, but he was the only one. Hamilton was the only one who ended up staying out.
Yes, indeed. And I agree with you in terms of team strategy as well. It was very interesting because I think during exactly what you said as well, during the the race restart, sorry, George Russell said everybody's pitting, and then I was like, okay, like it makes sense, like it's a no-brainer, like you said as well. But I think the reason why they wanted to stay out, like it doesn't really make sense why they wanted to stay out. For me, it seems like maybe they were going to pit later, and then because they pitted later, like a lap later, even though they did lose all those places, he could easily, I guess, like make that back up. But again, it was still really confusing at the time the way that they did. What was interesting later in the race was when they pitted again to the mediums, and when to the hard, sorry. And when he came out of fresher tires, and that's when he pretty much just ran right up the field because he was in clean air because he had passed Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen pulling the undercut, which was really the crucial part of it. So in terms of the team strategy battle between Red Bull and Mercedes.
Yeah, they also went for the two-stop as well, so that really could have also been really interesting. It was also really interesting how they knew like immediately that they were going to go for the two-stop. So yeah. There have been two instances that really come to mind with Hamilton pulling off the two-stop. One was Hungary 2 years ago at this very same track when he overtook Verstappen with just a few laps to go, and then Barcelona this year when he also pulled a surprise two-stop on them and really caught them by surprise at Barcelona. But that's what makes races at tracks where it's difficult to overtake. That's what makes these races exciting. Different strategies, teams going for the two-stop, and things like that. So I mean, you want to see more of it, and he's been able to make it work before. It just didn't work out this time for other reasons.
And to other talk about Esteban Ocon, though, first race win of his F1 career. What an absolute drive from Esteban Ocon, avoiding the turn one carnage. A great strategy, nonetheless, from Alpine. And we talked about it as well. They had some great pace on Friday, and it was shown all throughout the race on Sunday that Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon in the car were able to keep up with the top cars, and have able to stop Mercedes from ultimately getting the race win, especially Fernando Alonso. But speaking with Esteban Ocon, what are your thoughts on that first race win for Esteban Ocon?
Well, I mean, it's just a feel-good story. I mean, he's had such a difficult career, starting with Manor, a team that ended up folding after his half season there, after he made his debut in 2016. He was at Force India for 2 years, but then he was pushed aside when Lawrence Stroll bought the team, and then Lance came into the team. So, he was always going to be pushed aside when that news came out. And so he had to spend a year on the sidelines, and then, then he was going to Renault. He went to Renault last year, pushing out Nico Hülkenberg in the process as well, which was a shame because Hülkenberg's also done some great work in Formula One, even though he's never made the podium. He's delivered fantastic results for the teams he's driven for. And then there were still some doubts about Ocon last year about, does he have what it takes to be a future superstar in Formula One? And then this year he came out of the box straight away, delivered great results for Alpine, formerly Renault, obviously. Mm-hmm. And he had a bit of a dip over the last few races with Fernando Alonso regaining his old mojo. But his win today definitely shatters any doubts about his ability. What a drive, what a race, and hopefully we see more of this from him.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking about first, obviously George Russell's first points in an F1 race. So obviously he was moved to tears actually during the post-race press conferences. He was tearing up a bit, as many of us were, because he's worked so hard, and every time that he's gotten into a point situation, something bad has happened. Like Sakir last year, races this year and stuff, just like either a puncture or like something. But finally, he pulled it off. And it was interesting, the fact that Nicholas Latifi actually finished ahead of him. And I saw a meme actually where it was like a Captain Phillips, and like the meme where it's like, look at me now, I'm going to Mercedes now. Because instead of it was the whole thing was like George to Mercedes, but it's like Latifi finished ahead of him. But obviously, regardless, it's great to see, honestly, George Russell. He's got a great personality. He has a lot of talent in F1, which many of us know because that's why he's there. But in terms of those overall racecraft, it's starting to really develop, and it's becoming this fine-tuned racecraft, which is what we're loving to see. What are your thoughts on George Russell scoring his first points today?
Yeah, another feel-good story. This race really delivered. It delivered everything, and Williams finally getting points after such a difficult period of transition and mediocrity, even worse than mediocrity. They've had to go through so much, and it was just great to see. And like you said, Russell's had such rotten luck whenever he's been in the points before, whether he's crashing out behind the safety car at Imola or, getting punctures getting the puncture at Sakir, and then all sorts of different things. And then you look at Imola this year, his collision with Bottas, that really.
Well, he was running P9, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there was a lot of doubt about whether he would eventually get that Mercedes drive after that collision with Bottas. But I mean, another fantastic drive, and I love that bit. Just before the restart, when everyone was in the pits except Hamilton, he jumped the field in the pits and came out P2. I thought that was a brilliant move. I mean, obviously he had to give the places back as directed by the FIA, but it was really, really clever just to see him just jump everybody and take everyone by surprise. But it was an unusual situation at that point because no one knew what the exact regulation was. So he thought might as well take advantage of it and see what I can get.
Rules are meant to be broken, and then you learn from the rules. Right?
Yeah.
Like you don't know if you don't know about a rule until you first break it, and then you learn from it. And then you're like, okay, I can't do that again. So now he knows. Because what is it? We saw the same thing actually in the Audi, I think it was the Formula E Grand Prix, the Audi driver, he skipped through, he went from P8 to P1 through the pit lane under the safety car. Obviously, he was disqualified. So he learned about that later. But regardless, still great to see George Russell scoring his first points for Williams. And it's interesting to see if he's going to stay at Williams the rest of this, for next season as well for 2022, or if he will make that jump to Mercedes. But only time will tell for sure. Another battle, obviously, Alonso versus Hamilton. That was a exciting battle near the end of the race. For about 4 or 5 solid laps, we had some wheel-to-wheel racing. Alonso, of course, known for best. He's known for wheel-to-wheel racing. Great defending. He held off Hamilton multiple times. And you can see the differences. It was actually interesting when David Crofty was talking about it between Alonso defending Hamilton versus Mick Schumacher and how well he can defend against him and where the lines are and stuff. How aggressive does he want to be? But there was multiple times when Fernando Alonso stuck out his elbow and was like, no, you're not getting by turn 4 here, turn 2 here. So what are your thoughts on that battle between Alonso and Hamilton?
I mean, this was the battle that everyone wanted to see in 2007 when they were teammates at McLaren and Alonso pulled that sort of a dirty trick in the pit lane during qualifying. And we finally get to see them go wheel to wheel in such an intense battle. I mean, everyone loved it. Everyone loved it, except obviously for Lewis Hamilton, because I mean, it ended up costing him a potential win because he had the pace to pretty much catch everybody after he made his second stop to go back on the mediums.
Exactly, yeah.
And he could have definitely won the race had Alonso not held him up. And that's the problem with not only the Hungaroring because it's so difficult to overtake, but also because the conditions were not favorable to overtaking. The tires the tires suffer because of that, but also the current aero package of the cars this year. I mean, it's so difficult to follow, and then it's even more difficult to overtake. So in theory, this should have been a very simple overtake for Lewis Hamilton at a track like, say, Monza or Montreal. The overtake would have come a lot quicker and a lot easier, but a lot of circumstances went against Hamilton. Then, like you said, Fernando Alonso, he's very famous for getting the elbows out, and he had every right to fight for the spot. I mean, it's not like it was, a back marker, getting the blue flags. This was a genuine battle, and Alonso did everything he was supposed to, and he effectively helped Ocon get the win, because had Hamilton passed him a lot earlier, he definitely had the pace to catch Vettel and
even saw and stuff on that last lap. One more lap in that race, and Hamilton would have had Vettel. So when you take that into consideration, okay, if let's say, for example, if Alonso only held up Hamilton for 1 lap, that's 3 extra laps where Hamilton would have been able to get to Vettel or possibly Ocon. So Alonso did his job. As much as you don't want to help out your teammate because your teammate is your first rival, but in terms of it was the right thing to do. It was what he was doing. He was just defending his position in P4, and it was great to see. And I'm super excited to see if we have any other battles like that between Alonso versus Hamilton, Alonso versus Vettel versus Hamilton. A lot of these guys who've got more experienced racecraft, and we get the experience racing out of them and just a wheel-to-wheel racing. And there's not so much crashes where they're just they know where their breaking point is, where their final point, okay, I can't go into that turn too much longer or else I'm gonna. And they did touch actually, I think once or twice, or they made contact just a wee bit. Alonso and Hamilton did, which was exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, you always want to see drivers pushing it to the limit. Obviously,
Hmm.
if they do crash, then you hope they're okay. But when you see hard racing like this, that's what everyone loves to see. You love to see drivers going wheel to wheel, pushing the limits, and I mean that just made it for an even better, even greater spectacle.
No, exactly. All right, let's move on to our 3-word race recap. What are your 3 words to recap this race at the Hungarian Grand Prix?
Feel good stories. I mean, there were so many of them. Ocon getting the win, Williams getting points. You could also throw Mick Schumacher in there defending. He almost could have gotten a point or two today. He did really, really well. I mean, there was so many feel good stories wherever you looked, up and down the order. Ocon getting the win, Aston Martin getting another podium.
No,
It
exactly.
was just such a great day. This was one of the best races I've watched for a while. I mean, one of the
Oh,
better races this season for
easily.
sure. Yeah.
I think the only one that maybe you consider is maybe you talk about like Bahrain, the start of the season and stuff, or Imola. Like there's a few races that were like really close this season. For me, my 3-word race recap, I think there's the obvious one you could pick like turn 1 Carnage, but I think another one that I would say is really just Red Bull's bad day in the office. Like they just had a tough day in the office. Sergio Perez out of the points, Max Verstappen with floor damage, and they've now gone below the constructors' championship. Now they're back into second place, and Lewis Hamilton has a 7-point gap. And now it seems like the momentum is shifting towards back to Mercedes, which is like somewhat good because it was a little bit of mini Red Bull dominance for like 5 or 6 races. We're like, hey, it's good, but not too exciting. So it's good to have some back and forth. So those are my 2 words for the 3-word race recap.
Yeah, and going back to your point about the championships, I mean, you want to see good championship battles. You want to see championships decided at the last race because that means there's genuine excitement up until the very end. I think the last time we really saw something like this was 2012 when it was Sebastian Vettel fighting for the world championship when he was at Red Bull. I mean, you want to see these kind of battles. We never really got it afterwards. I mean, he won the championship again next year, but in 2013, but that was as straightforward as they come. And then since then, it's been Mercedes all the way. And then the battles between Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg until Rosberg won in 2016, then he retired. And since then, Ferrari gave a bit of a challenge 2017-18, but it's been all Mercedes, it's been all Lewis Hamilton. And it did get a little underwhelming from time to time, but now there's a genuine feel that this championship could go down to the wire because Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen are drivers that do not yield, as we saw 2 weeks ago at Silverstone. So
yeah, that's for sure.
It's gonna be close, and it's gonna be a great season, and I can't wait to see who ends up becoming world champion.
Oh, it's gonna be super exciting, nonetheless, for sure. Let's move on to most impressive driver. Who do you have as your driver that impressed you the most today?
Well, it's hard to go past Esteban Ocon, really. I mean, what a drive! I mean, he avoided the carnage at the start. There are a few drivers you could throw into that category. They avoided the carnage at the start, and they were able to make the most of a bad situation in terms of other drivers. They were able to take advantage of chaos, carnage. They kept their heads down. They kept out of trouble. They stayed out of trouble. They kept themselves clean. And he was able. There were times when Vettel was challenging him, but he held him off. He held off a 4-time world champion, and that's no easy feat.
No, exactly.
And especially with Vettel having a faster car, for him to be able to hold him off during a race when overtaking was happening quite often, actually. It was really, really great to see. And, these kind of drives are why Esteban Ocon is so highly rated, and it's so hard to go past him. His first win, his second podium, you love to see these kind of moments.
No, exactly. For me, my most impressive driver, it does seem a little bit weird. Like you could just obviously go with Esteban Ocon because he won the race, he avoided. But I honestly think that you have to look at Lewis Hamilton because, yes, he started on pole, but think about it. He dropped down to 14th place. He had to make all positions up from 14th all the way up to 4th place. And as well, he pitted twice. Now, again, after he pitted his stuff, he was moving up. So in my mind, that's like an option for me. Most impressive driver is Lewis Hamilton just from that. But you can't just not talk about Esteban Ocon and also Sebastian Vettel. I think also Carlos Sainz could deserve a nod for most impressive driver considering his start and stuff of where he started. Like if you look at where these guys started on the grid, like 15th, out of the points and get up into the points is just a mass amount of jab. I think Fernando Alonso could also be up there as well, but for me, my post-investor driver is just Lewis Hamilton. The fact that he did drop all the way back down to 14th place and was able to make up those places that we've seen multiple times. Times he's done, and it's just like, and it's like no other driver can do that. Like, not saying no other driver can do that, but it's very rare to see a driver drop down to 14th place. Like, look at Max Verstappen. Again, he had floor damage, but even with a clean car, we've seen it where he's just kind of sat in the back and struggled because he can't, make up places compared to other drivers like Lewis Hamilton. So
yeah, and just going back to that Hamilton point, you could see him after the race on the podium and in the press conference, and then the tweet that Mercedes sent out as well. He was not feeling great. He actually went to see the team doctor, the team said, and you could see him on the podium and in the press conference afterwards. He was exhausted. I mean, and he said that after he tested positive for COVID last year, he's still fighting it. He said he's still fighting it, and Ocon jumped in. This was an exhausting race. It was hot. It was mentally grueling, and I mean, this was a well-earned drive for every single driver who finished the race. Deserves a round of applause because I mean, these were not easy conditions to race, and people think, oh, the conditions are hot, it must be great, but those cars are hot, and when the track is hot and the ambient temperature is hot, it's not fun. I mean,
like you were sweating in a suit. You were wearing like a full-on suit, a helmet. And again, Lewis didn't have a drink I believe he didn't have a drink all race. That was a big issue as well, is that he did not have the drink, or he did not have water. So he was just sitting there like dry as a desert, really, just in his mouth and stuff. He just didn't have water, and he was like sitting there. And a lot of people were concerned and stuff because when you look at the podium, he was a little bit unwell. Obviously, hopefully he's okay. It seems like he's going to be okay. But to your point as well with COVID, it's like, he had COVID. He's still not 100%. Still battling. There's still the side effects and stuff. So for him to go out and stuff, even now with these type of conditions and stuff, it is always grueling. Like when you look at even talk about other races like Singapore, like drivers lose like 4 or 5 pounds during the race, like easily every time. But exactly. So super excited to see what happens. Actually, we have now the 3-week break, obviously up until Spa, which will be exciting to see. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton leading the championship as of right now is a 7-point gap over Max Verstappen. Any predictions for going into this summer break? And he's like, we're not saying we're gonna have any silly season moves, but just like any predictions going into what are your thoughts for the summer break? Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't come at the best time in terms of the championship battle and the stories and everything, because you want to see these sort of things, to keep you sort of busy. But I mean, we do need a bit of a rest, as do the teams and the drivers, and everyone needs a bit of a break, especially the drivers, because they've been through so much. But I mean, it's going to be really weird. And every time the summer break comes around, we're always just sitting there. What do we do to fill the time? What do we do? What are we going to do? But no, I think it's going to be a nice time to sort of de-stress for everybody. And then, just hit the ground running after the end of the summer break, go straight to Spa, and then get some great racing in and get the championship battle back on. I honestly do think that we'll see some driver moves in the summer, some more of the 2022 lineup confirmed, because this is when silly season really tends to kick off, especially especially when it comes to previous years. And there's always the speculation about who's going to move, and this year even more so, given that a seat at Mercedes could open up. So
yeah, the big speculation. And as well, the interesting thing about silly season, I think as well, I don't know if teams are going to be announcing it now, because we saw early on and stuff with Vettel, when he was announced that he wasn't coming back, he just decided, it's like, okay, well, if I'm not coming back next year, like, why do I care? Like, so it's like I feel like they don't want to announce it too early where they're just going to lose the chance, because Mercedes still want a chance. They have a chance to win the Constructors' Championship for an 8th year in a row. So if that is the chance that they have, then they're not going to be like, okay, well, we don't want to tell Bottas that, he might not get a seat next year and announce George Russell, because that would just throw off that dynamics between the relationship between Valtteri Bottas and Toto Wolff and the team as well. Like, you can't also forget about like the fact that Esteban Ocon, after winning this race, like, what are his chances now? Like, his chances have clearly gone up with them, because he is technically related with like relations with Toto Wolff and stuff. Helped them really get a seat at at Renault at the time. So there's a lot of questions going to the summer break. I think it's going to be a nice 3-week summer break as well from just watching F1. Watch some other sports and stuff. There's the Olympics still going on for a bit. So that's always good to see. But anyways, that will do it for our show. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out theemersonsports.com for more content. And we'll see you in about 4 weeks from now. Peace out.
Take care.